Hey everyone, it's Brad Peterson. I am Senior Vice President of the Music and Entertainment Division for Regions Bank here in Nashville, Tennessee. I am here today with a very long time, a very good friend and colleague, Mr. Gilles Godard. Gilles, I know what you do, but please tell everyone your official title and role.
Yes, I'm the Senior Vice President of Publishing here at Athem globally, not just for Nashville, but for all of our offices. As you know, we've got offices in LA, New York, Nashville, Austin, Toronto, and London, England. So I oversee all that, which is great.
So I love, again, I know all your history. Gilles and I are 15 years, I think, kind of working together. But I always like people to tell their story a little bit. So tell me, you are from Canada. Talk to me about kind of how you got here into the music business. You were a songwriter to start.
Yep.
Give us the rundown of how you got to be where you are today.
My dad he was playing in bands when he was young, and I loved music. There was a pedal steel guitar player in the band, and I remember saying, I want to play that instrument when I grow up. So when I was young, 11, 12, I started on pedal steel, started writing songs, and started doing shows, and eventually I decided that I wanted to record some of my music. So when nobody wanted to publish me, I started a publishing company. When nobody wanted to sign me for a label, I started my own label, Bookshop Records. And then I put out some records, and I got lucky. I got a top 10 single in Canada, started writing for BMG Canada, so I wrote for them for a few years. Then I moved to Nashville, started producing some artists here, and one of your guests, Tim Nichols, he and I started writing together like 34 years ago. We got lucky, we got some of our songs placed with Canadian artists, and I got my second deal in the US with Mike Curb. So I wrote for Mike Curb for 8.5 years. Then I wrote for Ole for the first year, and at Ole, I was telling my boss, I remember saying, you know what, you should sign that guy, you should buy that catalog, you should maybe hire that person. One day he calls me out of the blue and he said, Gilles, if you think you can do this, why don't you run my creative department in Nashville? I said, who's this? He said, it's Robert Ott. I said, no, man, I'm a writer-producer. That's what I do, I like working in studio and writing songs. He says, you know what? Try it for a year. I'll give you an executive salary, and it's this much. And I said, you had me at this much.
For a songwriter,
that's right. Yes, thank you. And I got lucky, Brad. That first year, you were part of that deal. I discovered that Jody Williams wanted to sell his catalog, and part of that catalog, there was 34 Liz Rose, Taylor Swift co-writes. So we bought that catalog, and it exploded because Taylor had a lot of hits on the first album. We had 7 songs on the first album, 5 on the second album, and 5 on the international album. So then from there he said, Gilles, why don't you become Chief Creative Officer and oversee my LA office and New York office in Canada? And I got the good fortune to find out that Timbaland was unhappy at his old publisher. So we signed his back catalog, and that exploded. So from there, I've been at Ole, which became Athem, for the last 15 years.
Wow.
Which is crazy trajectory.
So shift gears a little bit, and we'll get into it, your real world here. We talk a lot about what I do, working with independent music publishers. Athem is a very significant client of ours. That of late, and everyone I think hears this term, but acquisitions is what's happening every day in the world of music business. So, but I want a little different angle from you. I know you are on the front end of putting those deals together on a global basis. So, but talk about like post-acquisition, after you brought in Timbaland, or some of the other ones that you guys have done, Rush or whoever it might be. Talk about what it looks like after that. How do you guys come in and your team, led by you, and add value to that catalog, add value to that songwriter, that artist? What does that look like for what you do?
A great publisher, first of all, finds great writers, great catalogs, great composers, signs that, generates activity, and then finds a way to add value, as you say. Because we're funded by a teacher's pension plan, we were always in the mindset of, let's add this, not wait for the checks to come in, but let's find ways to add value. So I'll give you an example. Timbaland has been with us since 2012, bought his catalog. I was joking this morning on our call. I said, We bought even songs like Sexy Back. Athem is bringing Sexy Back, which is cool. But we knew that he was a great composer, that he could do also television and film. So with one of our divisions, which is Jingle Punks, we did a cartoon series where Timbaland was invited to write the theme song. So it creates sort of a new synergy, Timbaland writing a theme song for cartoon series, and Jingle Punks did all the underscore, and it's starting to explode now. So that's a great success story. Every time we sign something, we feel like, why don't we repurpose this song? Why don't we get a younger artist? Example, Megan Patrick is one of our artists. We own a piece of Black Velvet, the old hit from, I guess, the early 90s. She did a new version of that, an acoustic version, and we put it out. So we always try to find ways to repurpose the catalogs, try to get artists in other territories to re-record, put them in movie and film, and we've been very fortunate to have a lot of success that way.
You had such a long, successful career kind of in the business from a different aspect,
Yeah.
from a different country even at one point in your beginning. As we come out of the pandemic and hopefully some silver linings, what do you think, how do you think the next 3 to 5 years in the music business, what does it look like? What do you think will be driving forces? What will be important for you?
Yeah, I was reading the Goldman Sachs report, and they said that streaming is really the shining light, the future, digital. It's like, it's a house that we're all moving in, and I can see that it's paying off a lot more. As a publisher, I also realize that we should own a lot more masters. Sound Exchange is paying a lot of money now. I have artist friends in Canada and Europe who have always owned their masters, and through this pandemic, they got checks from Sound Exchange going, Gilles, if we didn't own our own masters, it would have been terrible during COVID. We're getting hundreds of thousands of dollars from masters that we've owned forever that never paid off. So that's another division. I remember years ago talking to Hartwig Massoud at BMG saying, as publishers, we should start investing 50% of our money into masters and 50% in publishing, because one, the masters, you can have a sync placement right away and it pays within the 60 or 90 days. And if it's a huge sync, some big songs, one of our biggest sync song was Suit and Tie by Justin Timberlake. For
Jay-Z.
For the Super Bowl, the year that came out, we had a commercial with a beer during that, and that was a huge, close to $1 million, just for one sync. So wish we would have owned the master. We didn't, but we got paid for the master side. And for those out there who don't realize this, but in publishing world, a sync placement is the only true fair deal, because the writers get 50% of the placement. That, let's say it makes $1, they get 50 cents, and the master owners get 50% of that, and it's their 50 cents or $500,000. So syncs, by owning masters for the future, will be very, very important for the publishing world and for writers who own their masters. Sometimes they'll do demos and do a version of their hits that they own those masters.
Yeah, syncs have been sort of the market-driven price.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff, as we know, is governed by, old legislation and old law.
Correct.
That's always something that you and people in your industry are
Yep.
trying to improve and bring current. And I think we've talked in other conversations we've had with publishers about everyone's always trying to figure out how to pay songwriters better. But syncs is a great field in that you have a true kind of market established. All right, I like to do this. I've done this before in other interviews. I want to do this one too. Have a little bit of fun for a second.
Yep.
I think it's fair to say we're all in this business because we love music.
Yep.
At the end of the day, you're a fan.
It's true.
We're fans of music. Where have been throughout your career, where it was kind of your idol or somebody you just went, am I really standing here with this guy?
Yeah,
Or girl?
a couple. I've been very, very fortunate to be invited to go see Justin Timberlake. Regions Bank, you guys hosted us to Justin Timberlake
That's right,
event.
that's a fun show, yeah.
And I was at an after event and got to see him and say hello and say that, we work with Timbaland. He's one of our writers. And when they work with somebody that you've signed, it's like it opens up the conversation.
You got credibility automatically.
Exactly. That was like exciting. And Ryan Tedder.
Oh man,
He
is so impressive.
Ryan
that guy,
Tedder
man.
is a genius. A friend of mine invited me to dinner. It was a songwriter, and he and his wife, Ryan Tedder, and I went with one of my writers, Monty Powell, and we spoke. We had drinks and visited for 4 hours. And then the following year, he was roasted by the NMPA. He was like, I think the icon of the year or the writer of the year.
Yeah, I was there at that.
And I don't know if you remember this, but this is a story worth telling, and I hope I'm not taking too much time.
No,
but
I
you
want
can
you to do
edit
this. This is the good stuff. This is where you and I
So
love doing what we're doing.
he comes out, thanks everybody for the award, and says, I'm going to tell you how he wrote the song and how it wrote with Adele, and starts playing a song that he wrote with Adele. And then he says, there's something else I want to say. Somebody asked me in an interview, what's the power of a song? What's a song worth? And he said, when I lost my record deal before Enter Records came out, I remember coming home being very depressed and putting out the 2 or 3 songs that we had recorded on, I think it was MySpace then, before we had
Yeah, I
Facebook.
guess it would have been, right? Yeah.
And the next morning when he got up, he had hundreds, if not thousands of people loving the song. And one person said, I'm so glad that you put that up last night because I was considering committing suicide.
I remember him telling the story now.
That's how powerful a song
Yeah,
is.
I remember him telling that story.
That was a moment.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think that's, again, we talk about the business end of it and Region's relationship with your company and how we've worked together for 15 years, but the relationship part of it is so important. It's like relationship on steroids. Somebody was asking me earlier, as part of our team, kind of just what are the differences working in this business? And I said, it's hard to describe because there's sort of a lot of unwritten rules about it and unspoken kind of style and how you do business together and how you speak to each other and how you don't speak to each other and that sort of thing. And it's so, again, relationship on steroids. That's all I can describe it.
And I have to thank you, Brad. You were there from the beginning. To do my first deal with Jody Williams, we probably wouldn't have been able to close because we needed a huge check overnight, and Brad got me that huge check so that we could close on that deal. So thank you for that.
We had to kind of move funds between Canada and the U.S.
Like that, when we couldn't do it that fast. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate Regions Bank as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm
you,
so
Brad.
glad you were able to do this today.
Same here, man.
Usually, again, this man's jet setting all over the world, and you are off tomorrow to another city.
Tomorrow,
So
yes. Thank you.
I'm glad we caught you. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.